When my wife and I arrived at the Halloween party, it was already in full swing. It was impossible not to notice her toned figure in a sleek, tight Catwoman costume. Despite being a mother of two, Lisa looked fantastic. I sometimes forget just how beautiful she is. I, on the other hand, was dressed as a pirate. Perhaps not the most impressive costume, but not bad either. Lisa gave me a quick peck on the cheek before mingling with the other guests. I made my way to the drinks area, where my friends were deep in a lively debate. As I approached, I realized they were arguing about the age-old question, Hulk or Superman? It struck me as a bit ridiculous given the brainpower in the room. Obviously, Superman was the better choice, but I decided to join in, confident in my knowledge from childhood spent engrossed in Marvel and DC comics. However, my input only intensified the debate, leading to more chaos. But that's what happens when you mix beer with passionate fans. Eventually, we all agreed to drop the topic and enjoy the night. Knowing Lisa wouldn't want to leave anytime soon, I planned to stay relatively sober. She was having a great time chatting with her best friend, Sarah, who was also dressed as Catwoman. Lisa and Sarah had been inseparable since middle school, despite having completely opposite personalities. They often joked about being switched at birth, a joke they both secretly detested. Sarah was married to Tony, who was quite different from me. While I managed restaurants, Tony worked with his hands. Though I wasn't as active as I used to be, I still maintained decent fitness from my college boxing days. Tony, on the other hand, worked at a nearby factory, doing heavy lifting for hours daily. He was practically a gym rat, sporting a muscular build. Unlike my neat short hair, his was long, tied back in a ponytail, accompanied by a beard that gave him an Aztec warrior vibe. If Tony resembled Drogo from Game of Thrones, I was more akin to Don Draper from Mad Men. Although I never really warmed up to Tony, I didn't dislike him either. Our connection was solely through Sarah, Lisa's best friend. Tonight was no exception. Seeing him in a Tarzan costume in the chilly weather struck me as insensitive and foolish, reflecting his usual behavior. Despite his often inappropriate flirtatiousness, the women, including Lisa, found it amusing rather than offensive, which bothered me. Sarah's apparent indifference, despite occasionally playfully scolding him, suggested she took pride in his ability to attract attention. As the night progressed and Tony's drinking lowered his inhibitions, his flirtations became more pronounced, regardless of the women's marital status. Some husbands might have been angry, but no one reacted, perhaps out of fear, intoxication, or a desire to avoid confrontation. However, I stayed vigilant, ready to intervene if he crossed a line with Lisa. Sensing my unease, Lisa approached me. "Are you enjoying yourself, Tom?" she shouted over the music. I nodded, taking a sip of my beer, watching her dance. Her attention shifted to Tarzan, silently appraising his physique. Unintentionally, I felt a surge of jealousy. Who dresses as Tarzan in this weather? Lisa snapped back to reality and faced me. "You know Tony, always craving the spotlight," she chuckled, but the taste of my beer suddenly soured. "Are you jealous?" she asked. "Jealous of him? I don't need to strip down to get attention," I replied defensively. Lisa laughed it off, but her attention drifted back to Tony. As the night wore on, Dominic's flirtations became less of a focus as I mingled with my genuine friends. It wasn't until later that I noticed Dominic making advances toward Lisa. Searching for her, I found them in the kitchen, engaged in a too-friendly conversation. My jealousy flared, and Dominic retreated upon seeing me. Lisa sensed the tension and greeted me with forced warmth. "Hi, darling, I was just looking for you," she said hurriedly. "We've been in the same place all night, Lisa. What were you two talking about?" "You looked awfully cozy," I asked, my tone accusatory. She tried to dismiss it. "Nothing happened, Tom. Dominic was just being his usual flirty self," she assured, but my unease lingered. "I'm just a bit tipsy, honey." "Don't worry," she said, patting my cheek before leaving. For the rest of the evening, Dominic and Lisa kept their distance, exchanging only glances that unsettled me. I needed a break. The beer was kicking in, and I needed the bathroom. Afterward, I bumped into Dominic as if he trailed me. "Got a problem, Tom?" he slurred, his gaze menacing. "What?" I felt the surrealness of the moment. He accused me of looking down on him due to my wealth, inciting superiority. It puzzled me. You're drunk, Dominic. Go home before you say something you'll regret, I said, moving past him. Regret what? Like sleeping with your pretty wife? He jabbed, grabbing my attention. I confronted him, warning him to keep my wife out of his twisted thoughts. He smirked, dismissing them as memories, not fantasies. His words struck me like thunder, ending the conversation. You're full of it, I retorted, less certain now. Then he made crude remarks about Lisa, crossing a line. Enraged, I struck him, the impact echoing through the drywall. Descending the stairs, I found Lisa, her tear-filled eyes confirming Dominic's claims. Panic ensued as Dominic lay unconscious. Amid the chaos, Lisa approached me, her question frozen on her lips. A glance told her I knew. Her teary eyes confirmed Dominic's words. Call emergency. Dominic's unconscious, she cried. Screams echoed from above, but I stood there, looking at Lisa, searching for the woman I married. Honestly, I didn't care about Dominic's fate at that moment. What the hell did you do to my husband? A scream pierced the air behind me, followed by fists punching my back. I dodged Sarah's swings, and someone pulled her away. What the hell, Richard? The party host questioned, noticing the chaos. Ignoring him, I faced Sarah. Did you know your husband slept with Lisa? Her silence spoke volumes, confirming her knowledge. Without anger or denial, she just looked at me as if she knew everything. Lisa's hand rested gently on my shoulder. Tom, we need to talk, but not here, she said softly. I turned to her, unleashing a surge of rage unlike any I'd felt before. It was so intense, tears welled in my eyes, a release of emotion preventing me from exploding. He woke up, a shout echoed from above. Sarah hurried back upstairs. My anger began to fade as the gravity of the situation sank in. What if I had seriously injured Dominic in a moment of anger? I could face lifelong consequences, even assault charges, jeopardizing my hard-earned career over a drunken mistake. The same drunken mistake who slept with my wife. Tom, come on, honey. Let's get out of here. We need to talk, Lisa pleaded.
No, Lisa.
You're going home with your boyfriend and his wife. I'm leaving, I retorted, heading for the front door. Lisa grabbed me in desperation. Tom, you can't leave me here. We're going home, and we're going to talk. Do you hear me? You're not leaving me behind, she cried, her face streaked with tears, a mix of fury and sadness. I can't handle this, Lisa. If I go home, I could end up in jail for assault. I don't want to add domestic violence to the mix. Damn you, Tom. Damn you. Want to punch me? Go ahead, coward. At least you'll acknowledge me. Damn it. It'd be the first time you've touched me in weeks. She jabbed her finger into my chest, her anger escalating, leaving me puzzled by its intensity. She was the one in the wrong, yet she was furious. Is that it? Because I don't cuddle you every night? Is that your lame excuse? Is that why you cheated with this idiot? She didn't respond verbally, but her defiant glare spoke volumes. Just so you know, Lisa, I earn a living. I don't have a husband to pay my bills. Maybe if you had a job, you'd understand what it's like to come home exhausted. Suddenly, I remembered our audience, hanging on every word like they were watching a movie. Lisa was mocking me. Poor Tom, too tired for his wife, yet finds time for adult movies. Maybe if you paid attention to your wife instead of silicone Barbie dolls online, she wouldn't confide in her friend about feeling neglected. Lisa's voice crescendoed, fists clenched, tears streaming down her face, a mix of pain and fury. It was the ultimate humiliation. I had no witty retort or comeback. Speechless, I faced the judgmental stares of our friends and neighbors. Shock, disgust, sympathy, and perhaps a hint of entertainment. I had to leave. Lisa's cries of despair echoed until I started the car and drove off into the night. This story, based on real events, is not from Tom's perspective but mine, Richard, the party host. Yes, I have a hole in my drywall, courtesy of Tom and Dominic's altercation next to my daughter's room. Writing from Tom's viewpoint allowed readers to feel his anger and humiliation. My wife and I discussed it extensively. It's like watching a train wreck. You can't look away. Sarah's lack of anger when Tom disclosed Lisa's affair with Dominic indicated she was already aware. Was it a ménage à trois or another scenario? Frankly, a ménage à trois involving them would rival any adult movie. How long had this been going on? I also noticed the exchanged looks between Lisa and Dominic at the party, suggesting something more. Maybe I'm overanalyzing, but maybe not. It was evident Tom was neglecting Lisa carnally, perhaps in other aspects too. Was this an excuse for her infidelity? I doubt it. Does it explain why she cheated? Certainly. Women whose advances are consistently rebuffed may be more tempted to have an affair, especially if the husband shows interest in other women or watches adult movies, which can be seen as a form of betrayal. By the way, Lisa is incredibly attractive in real life. In my opinion, any man would find her irresistible, but this reinforces the saying that for every beautiful woman, there's a man tired of having love making with her. The crucial question is, what happens next? Currently, the four of them are keeping silent about the situation, but it's only a matter of time before it comes out. While this story is based on true events, I didn't witness everything and had to take creative liberties, especially with Tom's inner thoughts. I sympathize with him and the tough choices he faces. Lisa treated him unfairly, regardless of her reasons. I'm uncertain whether reconciliation or divorce is the best path. Full disclosure, I'm somewhat biased as Tom is a friend of mine. And about Superman and the Hulk? I side with Tom. Superman's powers, like thermal vision, flight, and super speed, would easily defeat the Hulk, unless there's kryptonite involved. But that's beside the point. Mr. Chiron, they're calling you on line 1. Betty's voice broke through my thoughts. Who is it, Betty? Mr. Ford is calling for you, sir. Tom called me. I've been trying to reach him since the Halloween incident. Until now, he, his wife, and their lovers remained silent. But there have been so many questions. How could something like this not happen? The public showdown was so dramatic, with elements of betrayal and violence, and the epic confrontation between David and Goliath. Except this time, Goliath had a glass jaw and wrote a check his drunk self couldn't cash, and David cashed it out of genuine hatred. Patch him through, Betty. Sir, he seems a bit upset. Well, yes, his wife did publicly humiliate him. If he weren't upset, I'd be concerned. Thank you, Betty. I'll handle it. I awaited the click indicating I was connected to Tom. Hey Tom, it's Richard. I've been trying to reach you since. I couldn't bring myself to say these words out loud ever since I found out about my wife sleeping with that bastard. Tom's voice still carried the simmering anger beneath his composed tone. Even over the phone, his emotions were palpable. So, do you want to talk about it? I asked, hearing a chuckle from him on the other end, tinged with bitterness. It almost sounded like a snort. Why would I want to talk to you, Richard? Huh, buddy? So you can broadcast it online? Does your little story need a sequel? Are people dying to know what happened next to the guy who couldn't satisfy his wife? Can't your eager fans just wait to see how my damn life unfolds?
Fine.
He had read my narrative. Now, not only was he furious at his cheating wife, her deceitful friend, and her caveman lover, but he was also angry with me. Fantastic. Tom and I were high school buddies. He played baseball, I played football. Despite losing touch after school, him off to college, me joining the Air Force, we reconnected when I returned to our hometown years later. He'd landed a management job at Olive Garden. I teased him about wasting his college degree, but he persisted and quickly climbed the ranks, eventually becoming a district manager overseeing multiple restaurants, earning almost as much as me. Now, my dear friend was seething at me. Not good. Tom usually, I'd crack a joke to diffuse tension, but in this case, it would only make things worse. I especially like the ending, I began, but he cut me off. I had no choice but to shut up and listen. You know, where I tucked my tail between my legs and ran off like a coward. Nice touch. His words dripped with sarcasm, leaving me feeling like a terrible friend, utterly defenseless. Tom, where are you? We need to talk, I urged. You know what's funny, Richard? I've suddenly become quite the popular guy these days, more so than ever before. Seems like everyone wants to chat with me. Must be my charming personality, he quipped, his voice slurring slightly. I could hear the clinks of liquid pouring into a glass. Tom, are you drunk? I asked, concerned. No, Richard. I was drunk an hour ago. Can't tell you who I am now, he retorted sarcastically. All right, I admit it. I was a lousy friend, but I'm here to make it right. Where are you, Tom? I said, hastily grabbing my coat and keys, momentarily forgetting my work obligations. Screw you, Richard. Not telling you where I am. Don't you dare show up at this bar. I'll mess you up if you do, he warned before the line went dead. But I didn't need him to tell me. I knew exactly where he was. There were only a handful of bars in town worth going to, and Tom had his favorite at Moe's, partly because he had a thing for the cute bartender there. She was the type who could flirt and seem unattainable at the same time, which only added to her allure. Yet, despite her charm, she wasn't busy when I walked in. My heart sank, seeing Tom alone at the bar, the sole patron in the place. Checking my watch, I realized it was just past noon. Karen, the bartender, greeted me with a wave, her eyes showing concern. Does this handsome guy belong to you? She teased, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I nodded, subtly gesturing for her to give us some privacy with a tilt of my head towards Tom. It was all I managed before his fist connected with my face, sending me reeling and seeing stars. No wonder Dominic ended up in bad shape. Before I knew it, I was on the floor, wiping blood from my lip as Tom glared down at me. Eventually, he shook his head and returned to the bar stool. I picked myself up, signaling to Karen to keep quiet as I made my way over to Tom before he noticed me again. She stood before us, eyes wide as saucers, as she started to approach. I silently waved and nodded, signaling that it was all right. In response, she nodded back and resumed clearing tables. Now that that's settled, can we talk? I asked, mustering up courage as I sat down beside him. He took another sip of his beer and shook his head. Off the record, he quipped sarcastically. I chuckled inwardly. At least his sense of humor was intact. Anyway, you really hit a nerve there, he said with disdain. How's your relationship with your mom? You've met her, right? Yeah, I still remember her frisking me to make sure I didn't bring any forbidden stuff into her house, I replied, trying to lighten the mood. We laughed about it later, Tom recounted, taking another sip before meeting my gaze. For God's sake, Richard, it was bad enough going through that, then reading about it and knowing all my friends knew it was me. Tom, I just pinned it down. I never meant to embarrass you, and besides, no one will even know it's you. I tried to reassure both him and myself. 2 cats, Tarzan and a pirate. Plus the pirate who tossed Tarzan into the wall. How many damn Halloween parties do you think that's happened at? Most of them are the same. Tom looked like he wanted to punch me again. You find this funny? Okay, humor was definitely not the way to go. You're right, Tom. I was an idiot. I genuinely apologize for putting you in that spot. Well, I'm not sorry for punching you, he retorted. I rubbed my chin and chuckled. You still punch like a girl. No wonder you always got your backside kicked in boxing. That seemed to break the tension, and it continued to thaw. I managed to coax him away from Moe's and into my car. Karen shot me a grateful look and hugged me as we left. Take care of him, Richard. He's going through a lot, she said. My jaw was throbbing and beginning to swell, but I got Tom out of there, and that was what mattered most. The moment I secured him into my passenger seat, he drifted off, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Instead of heading to his mom's, I drove him to my place. Along the way, I called another friend, John. How's it going, Richie Rich? He greeted me cheerfully as he answered the phone. John was one of those guys who still acted like he was in his 20s. A great guy, though quite immature. I emphasize very since most guys are at least a little immature. He's the one who sparked the whole Hulk versus Superman debate. Always the life of the party. However, none of the wives really want their husbands to be under his influence. He had a knack for bringing out the teenage troublemaker in his friends, but we all loved him. John, I need your hand. I found Tom at Moe's, soused as hell. Brought him back here and laid him out in the basement, I explained. He looked hesitant. Are you sure that's a good idea? I don't want any drunken antics in front of the kids. He'll be fine, sweetheart. I'll keep an eye on him, I assured her, feeling her hand caress my cheek, sending a shiver down my spine. That's when she noticed the swelling. Richard, what the hell did he do this time? I'm all right, honey. Don't worry about it. Rich, get him out of here. Honey, everything's under control. The poor guy just found out his wife was cheating on him a few weeks back, and it happened so publicly. He's on edge. Plus, he's been dealing with it all alone. I'm his friend. He needed an outlet for his pin-up anger, and if that meant taking some hits, I didn't mind. Besides, my jaw is not as fragile as Tarzan's. Maybe he should consider a different costume next year. Nikki couldn't help but chuckle at that. Watching Tarzan get his backside kicked by a pirate was pretty amusing. I doubt Jane would approve. Yeah, Tarzan definitely got what was coming to him. Dominic should spend less time pumping iron and more time hitting the bag, Nikki quipped. Or at least learn to dodge, she added. We shared a laugh. Once her giggles subsided, one thing I've always admired about Nikki is her personality and sense of humor. It's one of the reasons why I can't stay angry with her for too long. I headed downstairs to check on Tom. His thunderous snoring assured me he was still very much alive, albeit functionally comatose. I slipped a pillow under his head when he let out a sound that could wake the dead. His drink's breath could have knocked out a bull. What the heck, Tom? I muttered, the stench clinging to me. I needed to step away. A few hours later, a zombie-like version of my friend emerged from the abyss. His bloodshot eyes screamed exhaustion and distress as he shuffled around my kitchen. Nikki shot me a silent warning that spoke volumes. Keep him in line or he's out. I approached him in the kitchen. How are you feeling, buddy? Feels like my wife cheated on me, humiliated me in front of the whole neighborhood, then ran me over with a truck? At least your memory is intact. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. His eyes narrowed. My memory's fine. I remember your damn story too. Remember how you socked me in the face for it? I rubbed my tender jaw. That part seems fuzzy. Might need a repeat just to be sure it's done. There was no real venom in his words, despite his talk of wanting to punch me again. I knew he wouldn't. I've said it before, but I'm really sorry about that story, Tom. I didn't think it would reach as many people as it did, and I certainly didn't think you'd find out about it. I was wrong. People actually read it. I even got a message from this guy I know who heard about the party from someone and then read your story online. Who's this guy? You don't know him. He's this loudmouth named Harry from Virginia. I chuckled. Harry Ina. Huh? Heard of him. Nice guy once you get past his attitude. By the way, he's on my side and thinks you're an idiot too, Tom said, grinning. Yeah, well, I'm sure he felt that way before reading the story I wrote about you, I replied. Tom nodded and chuckled. I gave him a friendly pat on the back, which he didn't seem to mind, confirming we were okay. Richard, why'd you have to paint me as a wimp? Did I really just bolt like that? Wimp? Tom, you took the guy down in one punch. I was half expecting you to bite his ear off. If you boxed like that in college, you'd have been a champ. No one sees you as weak. Screw you. It's a skill I've still got, idiot. He smirked and shook his head. I really handed him his rear, didn't I? Hell yeah. Bet your sweet rear you couldn't pull that off, he teased, nudging me. Nah, might take me 2 hits, I quipped back, unable to stifle a chuckle. It was good to see Tom as he was before Halloween, even if it was fleeting. Fair enough, he said. That's when I noticed Nikki standing in the doorway with a peculiar expression. Her eyes urged me to see her right away. I left Tom to his meal and approached her. What's wrong, dear? Richard, she glanced around nervously and drew me closer to whisper. Somehow Lisa found out Tom's here. She's on her way. Damn, John probably called her to vent or something stupid. Unknowingly gave away Tom's location. You need to intercept that woman at the door, Nikki. Nikki raised her hands and shook her head. Rich, I'm not getting involved in this mess. Tom needs to face this. He's been avoiding her for 2 weeks. I felt frustration rising toward my wife. She cheated on him. Haven't you forgotten that? No, I haven't. I've got a damn hole in the wall as a reminder. I glanced at Tom, who seemed oblivious to the impending showdown. What do you want me to do, Nikki? Her expression softened with resolve when she saw my determination to help my friend. He has to handle this himself, babe. You can be there for him as a friend, help him through it, but he can't run from it. She patted my chest and left. I turned to prepare Tom for what was coming. Tom, I heard your conversation. You can't exactly whisper. She's on her way. He rubbed his chin and winced. Then his expression shifted to determination. Fine, he said, pushing away from the table. Turning to me, he met my gaze. I'm ready to face this, he declared. With that, he rose and walked out of my back door. Tom stood on my back porch, staring at the beautiful sunset. Soft hues painted the pale sky, serene and almost calming. The serenity shattered with Lisa's arrival. Tom, honey, she called out, alarmed. He didn't respond, his eyes remaining fixed on the sky above. Lisa interpreted his lack of reaction as an invitation, which in some sense she wasn't entirely wrong about. She settled beside him, drawing her knees to her chest as if seeking protection. I've been searching everywhere for you, honey, she said, starting off in the worst possible way. I've been in the same place all night, Tom muttered, deliberately echoing the exact words he used when he found her cozying up to Dominic in Richard's kitchen a couple of weeks ago. She seemed puzzled by his response. Tom, we need to talk, she said, and he nodded in agreement. From his side vision, he could sense her anguish. He avoided looking directly at her face, but it seemed like a grim sight. Swollen eyes, flushed cheeks, a somber expression. At least that's how her voice conveyed it. I love you, honey. It's a lie, he cut her off. Tom, stop it. Just stop it. You can't claim to love me and then embarrass me the way you did, airing our issues in public like that. I would never do that to you. What are you talking about, Tom? You did this to me, she said, her voice rising with anger. You stormed down the stairs like a madman in front of everyone. You asked Sarah if she knew I was sleeping with her husband right in front of everyone's eyes. If you wanted to talk privately, you could have pulled me aside and yelled at me in the car. But no, you were the first one to air out my business like that. In a way, she had a point. He didn't see it that way at the time. He was blinded by rage. Okay, Lisa, I'll give you that, but I didn't initiate this. Your damn boyfriend confronted me, telling me all about your indiscretions in front of other people. I handled it the best I could. I was furious, rightfully so. Could I have handled it differently? He paused to rein in his emotions. But I didn't cheat with anyone. You didn't have someone come up to you and rub my betrayal in your face. He looked her squarely in the eyes, the anger draining from her expression, replaced by remorse and guilt. I know, Tom, she said softly. He simply shook his head. Do you really think so, Lisa? Do you really? Her eyes sparked again. Maybe you didn't physically betray me, Tom, but you weren't present for me. Remember last night when I wanted closeness, and you? He shook his head. It was on my birthday. I treated myself to some beautiful lingerie from Victoria's Secret. It was so hot. I indulged in a fragrant bubble bath, getting excited thinking about the night ahead. I ethered my body with eucalyptus-scented lotion, spent an hour doing my hair and makeup. Do you recall that night? Tom did remember that night. That was the day he had to fire Frank. He was his close friend, one of his assistant managers, back when he worked at Olive Garden. They'd become good friends over the years. When the allegations surfaced, he stood up for him vehemently. He was certain Frank wouldn't do something so reckless, but the girl had text messages, damn text messages. When they emerged, he was livid. He was the one who promoted him, vouched for him, and had to deal with it, or they'd deal with him. So needless to say, he wasn't in the best mood that evening. But he didn't forget her birthday. He made a reservation at her favorite restaurant, all set for a nice dinner, but all Lisa wanted that night was dessert. We went out to dinner for your birthday, and then we made love that night, Lisa. I recalled this, he said. She shook her head sadly. We had lovemaking, Tom. You couldn't even enjoy it. Then, when I tried to cuddle with you, you pushed me away, saying you were tired. That's why I gave you space. Her voice caught, and she swallowed hard. I knew she wasn't finished yet, so I waited for her to continue. Then I woke up in the middle of the night and saw you at your computer. I saw you watching adult films and pleasuring yourself. The words came out forcefully, and then she broke down, her body trembling as she tried to cry silently but to no avail. Tom sat beside her, speechless. Slowly, he began to grasp her perspective. Hearing her side of things opened his eyes. Until tonight, She was just a deceitful cheater. Now, he wasn't so sure who she really was. I get it, Lisa. All right. I took you for granted. But do you truly grasp this, Tom? Do you comprehend how deeply this devastated me? Can you fathom the pain of realizing that at your best, you're not enough to satisfy your husband? I doubt you do. After that, I made a pact with myself to stop initiating lovemaking with you. I wanted you to desire me, but you never did. So that's why you ended up with Dominic. Did he make you feel like a woman? He asked. She sniffled beside him and wiped her nose on her sleeve. Yes, Tom. He and Sarah did. Damn it, Sarah and I got drunk once in high school. Something happened that night. In the morning, we were mortified. We chalked it up to the drinks and pretended it never occurred. Well, over a decade later, I found myself at her doorstep in tears. A few weeks afterward, feeling like the most inadequate woman alive, I went to her place. I was so low, so shattered. I told her I needed to get drunk and did. The feeling of inadequacy started to fade, but it never truly went away. And how did you end up in bed with her and Dominic? Tom asked. Dominic came home from work and found us completely wasted. Sarah confided in him about my issues. He began telling me how beautiful I was, how he desired me. Sarah backed him up, mentioning our past in high school. He got excited and suggested we kiss. We were so drunk that we obliged. It all began with a playful kiss, but before I knew it, things had escalated beyond control. How many times did you sleep with them? She turned to gaze at the now darkened sky above them and whispered, twice. It stung. The drunken episode was bad enough. He could eventually move past it, but knowing she'd been with them again was a whole other blow. So, at the party in the kitchen, what were you and Dominic discussing? Tom asked. Her eyes flashed with anger and a hint of guilt as she recalled it. He was drunk, complimenting my hot costume and suggesting we go to their place for some fun. I was worried someone might overhear, so I tried to hush him. I admitted my mistakes, saying the three of us couldn't continue. Then he got a bit forceful, pressing against me. That's when you walked over. Yes, I gathered my lingerie in a pile. Wasn't that what you said? She nibbled her lip, shaking her head. I was furious, Tom. Seeing Dominic pestering me like that just reminded me how little you valued me. Were you planning on heading to his place later for some fun since he appreciated you? She shook her head, locking eyes with him. No, I was hoping you'd finally take the initiative. I chose the Catwoman outfit because I knew you loved Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns. You once told me how you fell for her because of that suit. I saw the way you looked at me in it. I saw desire in your eyes. Mine. I almost skipped the party altogether to get what I'd been yearning for. I wish I had. I hoped when we got home, you'd take me. And then Dominic happened. She spat his name out. Well, none of this would have happened if you hadn't slept with him. Why didn't you just talk to me, Lisa? She sadly shook her head again, sniffing. I don't know, Tom. I wish I did. Lord knows why I didn't. Well, I guess there's enough blame to go around. She turned to him, hopeful. So, what now, Tom? I don't want to lose you. I love you so much. I'll do anything for us to get through this. Tom's head swirled. Can we get through this? Can I forgive her, knowing I played a part in our downfall? Leave the past behind? I don't know, Lisa. So much has happened. It'll take a lot for us to start healing from this. A glimmer of hope sparked within her. She wiped her tears, gripping his hand. Please, honey. I'll do anything. Just give me a chance to show you how much I love you. Tom met her gaze, sensing hope. He began to feel it too. It'd take time, but maybe they could mend each other. If they both fought hard enough, there might be a chance. All right, Lisa, but it'll take several steps. First, we need counseling. It's necessary. Obviously, we have a lot to work through. We need to learn how to communicate with each other. She kissed his cheek, embracing his neck. Yes, darling. Whatever you say. Secondly, you need to cut ties with Sarah. That's when he saw the light fade from her eyes, feeling it dim in his heart. What did you say? I said you need to end your friendship with Sarah. Tom, why are you asking me to do this? He reclined in his chair, staring at her in disbelief. Seriously, Lisa? You cheated on me with her and her husband. What do you expect me to do? Just trust that it won't happen again every time you're with her or talk to her. Do you realize what goes through my mind? How can I heal if this wound keeps getting salt rubbed in it? She recoiled as if he'd struck her, tears welling up in her eyes. They locked eyes in silence as seconds stretched into eternity. You want me to choose between my best friend and my husband? I can't do it, Tom. Please don't make me. Words couldn't convey the agony that coursed through Tom at that moment. Strangely, it was worse than catching her in the act. This time, there was no anger to mask it. His heart constricted painfully, crushed by the weight of the realization that it was too much to bear. The fact that she couldn't choose him over her best friend was devastating. A catastrophe of unfathomable proportions. The woman he loved most didn't love him the same way. He wasn't her one and only love. He shared her heart with another. Dominic's irrelevant now. I don't care about him. This is bigger, Lisa. But she couldn't sever her ties with Sarah. The bond was too strong, rivaling her love for him. She couldn't let it go, even if it meant sacrificing their marriage. Sadly, they divorced less than a year later. Lisa fought tooth and nail to prevent it, even stooping to humiliating herself. Tom never imagined he'd see her pride crumble like that. She begged him at his workplace not to leave her, embarrassing herself in front of everyone. Tom begged too. It was a heart-wrenching plea that left everyone uncomfortable. Even he secretly hoped he'd give her another chance, but he couldn't bear the thought of her being around him. As long as she refused to relinquish her friendship, in essence, he was right. No spouse should have to share. A year later, the wounds still run deep. There are no winners here. They do their best for the kids, avoiding putting each other down in their presence. Yet, many nights, Tom's been a shoulder for Greg to cry on. But there was one silver lining. This Halloween, he brought a date to my party. She wasn't dressed as Catwoman. Maybe she's just a rebound. Not his next great love, but finding someone new is still progress. Real life isn't about neatly packaged endings. It's a messy, gradual healing process. Lisa, Dominic, and Sarah didn't show up at the party. They cut off contact with the rest of us. Sarah remained staunchly by Lisa's side, accusing Tom of unfairness and trying to force an impossible choice. In my view, the choice wasn't impossible. Lisa simply didn't want to be married as much as a loving wife should. She claimed she'd do anything, but actions speak louder than words. She might have been willing to play the part of a loving wife, but when it came to sacrificing something personally significant, their marriage wasn't worth it to her. In the end, Tom is better off without her.